Hey there, it's Lara back once again to talk to you about the astrology for the next couple of weeks and focusing on the new moon in Scorpio that's coming up on November 4th, 2021. So thanks for being here. If you're new to the channel, I hope you stick around. I would love it if you subscribed and, left me a comment. And if you've been around for a while, I appreciate you and your continued support. And if you're waiting, for the website launch, it won't be too much longer. I know I've said that a few times, but as some of you know, life has really gotten in the way. But I've gotten some emails and messages and things like that. So you can go over to astrologymaven.com and sign up to get on my email list and get my free guide to working with the moon when you do that. And you will be the first to know when the website launches, which will be in the not too distant future. So, okay, let's talk about this new moon that's coming up in Scorpio, because it is really launching us into the grand finale of 2021. And it is really interesting for a couple of reasons. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some other things that are happening that are significant and related to this energy as well. And of course, we're going to take it through all 12 signs at the end of the video. And I'll tell you, where this is hitting your chart and what to watch for. So first of all, the new moon in Scorpio is happening at exactly 12 degrees of, I think it's 12 degrees and 40 minutes or something like that of the fixed water sign of Scorpio, right? And that just so happens to be exactly opposite where Uranus in Taurus is at the moment, at 12 degrees of Taurus. So a very, very close opposition to Uranus and Taurus. So that makes this a really interesting new moon. And there are some other reasons why this is an interesting new moon as well. And one of those is because Mars, who is the ruler of Scorpio, has just moved in to Scorpio. And so Mars is at home there, and Mars is true to nature in Scorpio. Mars also rules Aries, right? Another one of its home signs. But in Scorpio, Mars has power, and Mars can be effective at doing Mars things. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Being in Scorpio, its home sign, gives Mars some dignity and some strength that it didn't have when it passed through Leo and made a square to Saturn and Uranus, who are in the other fixed signs, right? Uranus and Taurus, Saturn and Aquarius, which are coming into their third and final square, exact square, at the end of this year. So this Mars is going to trigger that Saturn-Uranus square once again. And it's going to do so from a place of dignity and strength. So very interesting, very interesting. So, what Mars does, Mars is a hot, dry energy. Mars inflames and Mars severs. And, Mars is fierce. So it's bringing that energy of the sort of fierce warrior to kind of face the Saturn-Uranus deal that's been going on all of this year, right? The defining signature of 2021. Saturn in Aquarius, Uranus and Taurus squaring off. Saturn the old, Uranus the new. Saturn the establishment, Uranus, sort of in some ways anti-establishment, but Uranus wanting something new established. Saturn, the authority and the rules. Uranus, the rebel who breaks the rules and who liberates us from, the authority and the traditions and all of that. So we've had this sort of clash of the titans going on all of 2021. and it's come in and out of intensity, right? And as Mars has triggered, I mean, some other planets, but notably Mars has triggered the square, we've seen interesting things go on. So when Mars ingressed into Taurus in January, we had the insurrection on the Capitol building in Washington. And in fact, I think it was on the exact day that Mars moved into Taurus, right? Scorpio's opposite sign, the sign that Uranus is sitting in right now. Another fixed sign along with Leo, right? Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus are the four fixed signs. And this energy is really triggering those four fixed signs. So, I wrote a little thing about Mars moving into Scorpio on Facebook and Instagram yesterday. And so if you want to go over there and read that, you can. I'll put, the links to those two social media platforms are below. So if you want to go check that out and follow me there, you can, because I often post things there, and much more frequently than I do these videos. Not as in detail as these videos, but it gives you sort of, the important things. So if you want to go over there and check that out, you can. So, and I'll say a little bit more about Mars as we go through. I'm looking down because my notes are over here, just in case you're wondering if you haven't seen me do one of these videos before. So what else is happening? We're going to circle back to that new moon in a bit, but I want to tell you what else is going on. On November 5th, the day after the new moon, we've got Venus entering Capricorn. And Venus is going to retrograde in Capricorn. So it's there for quite a long time. Venus will move into Capricorn on November 5th and be there until March 6th. This is a long haul for Venus. So, and while Venus is in Capricorn, it's going to meet up with Pluto, right? Lord of the underworld, Pluto, 3 times because it's retrograding. So it's going to do this dance with Pluto, and Mars is going to get involved too. More on that, closer to the time, but it's important. I wanted to mention this to you. Well, not only because the ingress is taking place the day after the new moon, but pay attention to what's going on at the time of that ingress, because oftentimes what happens is when a planet makes an ingress into a sign, so it moves from one sign into to the next sign, it triggers that energy, and we kind of get a poke in the ribs about, hey, pay attention, this is what this is about, right? So if we're paying attention to that, we're better able to kind of get a handle on it and plan or be prepared. So just like I said, when Mars moved into Taurus, we had the insurrection, right? So like a big event happened. So it's not like necessarily the event is going to happen in your personal life. It sort of depends on your own natal chart, right? Your birth chart and how things are being triggered there. But it may be something that you notice going on, with the people around you or just in the world at large too. So, and what would that be? Well, Venus, right? Pay attention to Venusian themes. What does Venus rule? It rules our relationships. It rules what we do for pleasure and fun. It rules the sort of the fun things in life, the enjoyable, pleasurable things in life, right? It rules our resources and our money and that kind of thing as well. So it rules, feminine issues and topics kind of thing. So pay attention to what happens when Venus moves into Capricorn and whatever house Capricorn sits for you, right? So, and like I said, that's happening. Venus is there until March 6th. And incidentally, one thing I wanted to mention to you with regards to that is that the last time that Venus went retrograde in Capricorn was 2013, 2014. So if you look back to that sort of time frame, you might get a sense of what to expect. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the exact same thing, but it will trigger similar themes, right? So, okay, so that's Venus. And then the day after that, the same day, November 5th. So Venus moves into Capricorn and Mercury joins the party in Scorpio, right? So we have more amplification of that Scorpio energy going on. We are really, like I said in my post yesterday, like we are descending into Scorpio season, into the depths, right? The murky waters of Scorpio, where, Scorpio is a fixed water sign. Still waters run deep. That is the phrase that often comes to mind when I think of Scorpio. So we've got Mercury entering Scorpio, right? And Mercury in Scorpio can be quite like, it wants to get to the bottom of things. It can be probing. There can be, it wants the truth. It seeks the truth. It speaks the truth. It wants to uncover the mysteries. And it can be, Mercury and Scorpio can really cut to the point as well and be very strategic in its communications, that sort of thing. So that's Mercury and Scorpio. And then we've got the day after Mercury enters Scorpio, it will come into a sextile with Venus and Capricorn, right? So that's a little pick me up, shall we say, in the midst of some intense energy. And it may serve to smooth things over a little bit, if we're lucky, So then what else do we have going on over this period? On the 10th, okay, so I want to clue you in, I guess, to this time frame around the 10th of November. We've got sort of that week, like the 10th to the 17th, some pretty jarring things happening. So on the 10th, we have Mercury coming into a conjunction with Mars, so meeting up with Mars and Scorpio, and both of those simultaneously are squaring Saturn in Aquarius. Okay, so Mercury and Mars, like when two planets come together in a conjunction, it is like it's pressure, but in a different way than a square. It's like a compression, right? They're blending of those energies. And then they are squaring, so a conversation of tension and friction, where, you often hear me say, when you have a square, it's like something's got to give. It doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but you can bet that there will be action that has to happen to resolve the tension. And if we are proactive about that, and we are the ones taking the action by choice, it's more likely to turn out in our favor. Whereas if we kind of just sit back and implode, so to speak, or like let the tension have us, then it's more likely that things happen that are not in our best interest. Now, having said that, of course, we can't control everything, right? Astrology is fate plus free will, right? It's an interplay. It's the interface of those two things. And so not everything is within our control, but we can consciously respond to things though. Okay, so that on the 10th, like I was saying, Mercury conjunct Mars square Saturn, right, in Aquarius. So triggering that Saturn piece, that those boundaries, that authority, that whatever Saturn has been really trying to teach us in the Aquarius part of our chart, whatever Saturn has been making, difficult, whatever Saturn wants us to master in the Aquarius part of our chart. And we know what this is because it's been going on all year. And I've spoken about it before many times. Mercury conjunct Mars is triggering that, is inflaming that in some way, right? So be mindful around that time of your words, of your interactions with others, of your even like of your things like travels or working with equipment or machinery or vehicles. Um, um, just like don't like I'm not saying sit in a dark room and don't go anywhere. That's not what the point I'm trying to make. But just be mindful of how you are interacting with the world around you, and your thoughts, your words, your actions, those kinds of things. So I mean, this can be like powerful energy to get shit done too, really, and to have our say if that's what needs to happen, and to be brave with our words, and to think courageous thoughts and those sorts of things. So, right, okay, so that's the 10th. And then on the 13th, Mercury, right? Mercury moves quite quickly. So Mercury is going to oppose Uranus. And so we've had this new moon opposing Uranus and Taurus, and now Mercury comes through and does the same thing at the same degree, right? Around 12 degrees. Because Uranus is still sitting there at 12 degrees. And Uranus is retrograde right now. All right, then on the 17th, Mars follows suit. And Mars will also oppose Uranus in Taurus at around 12 degrees. So you get in the picture here, I'm assuming, and the pattern. This 12-degree Scorpio mark is really getting worked over. And I'll have you know that on a personal note, this new moon happens on my husband's birthday, and it happens exactly on his natal sun. And he has a stellium, a collection of planets, like a shit ton of planets in Scorpio. So I'm particularly, being the astrologer in the family, paying close attention to what's happening around this time for him and with him. So that's what's going on. Personally, for me, I also have my natal moon in Scorpio as well. So, things are traveling over that point in my chart as well. So let's talk a little bit more about, let's dive deeper into this new moon and what's happening in relation to that. So obviously, the new moon is triggering the Scorpio-Taurus axis because the new moon itself is happening at 12 degrees Scorpio, right? When the sun and the moon come together to birth something new, to conceive of something new, like they do at every new moon. And this time it's happening in Scorpio, and it's opposite Uranus and Taurus, Scorpio's opposite sign. So this axis of Scorpio-Taurus, it deals with our like sometimes I think of it as our inner resources, Scorpio, and our outer resources, Taurus. Although there is some crossover there, but it's like the states of material form, which Taurus deals with, and the transformation of the material, right, is what Scorpio deals with. It's simplicity, which is Taurus, versus complexity, which is Scorpio. And both, as I've mentioned, both are fixed signs. They have staying power. The fixed signs have staying power, right? But like they are both the process of things that takes a while. They are steadfast and concerned with stability, and not like rapid changes, right? But they can also sort of hang on too tightly, and hang on long past the time where it was time to kind of let go, right? If you know what I mean. Both of these signs can be sort of possessive and obsessive, right? I would say like Taurus would be on more the side of like possessive, and Scorpio more on the side of obsessive. And then we've got Uranus there in Taurus, which is, as I was saying, sort of as Uranus does, it liberates. Uranus is like coming in to these fixed energies and saying it's time to detach from something that's outdated, like let go of your tight grip that you have on this, right? It's time to let go of obsessions and of maybe possessions and of modes of being or of whatever it is that you're clinging to, because maybe you think it's what brings you safety and security, right? So, but if we, like this new moon, I see it as a kind of a time for reframing that, and reframing this concept of like, what does it mean to be stable and secure in our lives and in the world? So Scorpio delves deep really into the mysteries of life and what lies beneath, right? As like I use that phrase, still waters run deep. It's not afraid to enter the darkness, right? It's not afraid to kind of go into the dark night of the soul, because it knows that on the other side there is rebirth, right? One of the symbols for Scorpio is the phoenix. The phoenix rises from the ashes, but the phoenix has to burn up first before that can happen. So Scorpio wants emotional stability and security, but it also, like, there's an awareness there that in order to get that kind of emotional, stability and security, we have to first deal with the skeletons in the closet. We have to sort of stare our fears in the face. We have to, face the things we may not want to look at. The things that are taboo, the things that are in the dark corners. We have to sort of face that, even if we're kind of quaking in our boots, If you've ever listened to Brene Brown speak, you may have heard the phrase brave and afraid, right? And I've sort of adopted that mantra, and Scorpio sort of embodies that. It really embodies that notion of being brave and afraid, right? Courage does not mean we are fearless. I used to think that. But what courage actually is, what bravery is, being scared out of our wits and doing the thing anyways, doing the difficult thing. Not in a stupid sort of like foolish taking risks, dangerous risks way. That's not what I mean. It's fearing like what lies beneath sort of thing, right? The secrets, the things that lay in the darkness, literally, metaphorically, mostly, and being able to kind of face that. And then Taurus, right? So that's Scorpio, concerned with the emotional sort of stability and security. And Taurus is more concerned with the material stability and security. And that includes the earth and its resources, right? And like the natural resources. And Taurus is connected to our money. But the original sort of, substance of exchange, I guess, like it wasn't necessarily, paper money or even gold coins, but even if we are, part of like a barter economy, for example, we are still exchanging material things most often, or our services, for something material, that kind of thing. So Taurus is concerned with that material realm, those material resources. And Taurus knows that if we don't take care of our material health, right, and our which includes the earth, then we don't have physical health. We don't have what we need to survive. Like a healthy planet supports our bodies. And so if we don't have our basic needs met, what else matters, really? And we can't do, like, if our basic needs aren't met, Taurus, we can't do the deep work, Scorpio, right? We can't have, like, Scorpio is also connected with this notion of like intimate connections, and we can't have intimate connections. And when I use the word intimate, I'm not just talking about, like sex. I'm talking about like intimacy goes way beyond that. You can have emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy, like you can have a deep, intimate connection with life itself. But if we're in survival mode and we're always living in survival mode, it's very hard to experience that level of intimate connection, right, with people and life in general. So both of these both of these signs, do speak to finances. And, of course, we've got like this idea of our money being exchanged, to pay for things that we need for our needs and our wants. But beyond that, there's also an exchange of energy, right, that comes along with any kind of sort of financial transaction. And there's a question here of, are we getting paid what we're worth? And like oftentimes the exchange is unequal. Oftentimes, we're buying like whatever excuse me, cheap items, cheap clothes, cheap whatever, that has been made, like it doesn't cost us a lot, but the people who are actually making it are not the ones who are benefiting. There's that transaction is not equal. It's not fair. They're not being fairly compensated. The people that are working in these places, they're not being fairly compensated for their labor. And so there's this idea of using, and abusing people and resources and systems in order to get a bigger piece of the pie. And, this is something that's stirred up on this axis. And particularly because, although Scorpio and Taurus both relate to money in some way, Scorpio deals more with kind of like the big money and the power and control that is associated with that. So that's potentially something we could see, those themes we could really see playing out, in the world. And we're already having sort of labor strikes and all that kind of stuff going on. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I haven't shown you the chart yet, but I'm going to do that right now before I forget, and then I'll carry on. There's that shadow again. But anyways, what I want to point out is here's the sun and the moon in the sign of Scorpio coming together, right, to birth something new, right opposite Uranus and Taurus there. And then we have Mercury just about to move into Scorpio, and we have Mars already there, like I pointed out to you, and there's Saturn up here in Aquarius. And then we have, there's Venus, right, who is going to move into Capricorn as well very soon, like we mentioned. Okay, so that's the chart, just so you get a visual. So, we've got this element of Uranus. Uranus destabilizes. Uranus shocks. It electrifies. It liberates. It rebels. It disrupts. It sort of like it insists on change, right? And there are two ways we can interact with this change that is inevitable when Uranus is involved. It's like we are not going to stop it from happening. It's like, letting go of a giant boulder at the top of a mountain. Like you're not going to stop that. Or it's very difficult to, and there will definitely be some shakeups in the attempt. So, like I was saying, globally, I think we're likely to see some shakeups for sure, maybe to financial markets, to resources, to supply chains. We already know that we're having that kind of those kinds of issues, right? Taurus, the supply chain of goods, and Uranus disrupting that, and then and going into the holiday season as well, in many places. And we may see abuses of power, and maybe those things even coming to light, during this Scorpio season. And rebellion, further rebellion against the status quo, right? So we know what's been going on with Saturn, Uranus. We're getting a revisiting of that energy. And this time we've got Mars in strength and dignity in Scorpio, coming out with the blowtorch. So we'll see what happens there. Let's take it now through the houses. And before I do that, I want to remind you that if you have planets, like my husband, or significant points. So if you have like your sun, your moon, your rising sign, a cluster of planets, or even a personal planet, Venus, Mars, like right around the 12-degree mark of Scorpio, or the other fixed signs, Taurus, Aquarius, and Leo, then you are likely to have, a personal connection to this new moon. And that would be 12 degrees, give or take 3, even 5 degrees on either side. The farther you get away, the sort of less intense it tends to be. But so look for that in your own chart. And the houses that contain the fixed signs, Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, Aquarius, are being further triggered, right, at this time. So it's like this Scorpio energy, particularly Mars and Scorpio, also, Mercury moving through there. It's a time when like there's a catalyzing, there's an alchemizing. That's a good word for Scorpio. There's even like another word I thought of is, smelting kind of thing, right? Which is the process of like, melting down material to get the precious metals out. I live in a mining community, so I know about that kind of thing a little bit anyways. And so it's kind of like that's the energy that's going on right now. And the good news is, I know this all sounds intense, and it is, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. But the good news is that it can be potentially like a really powerful time. It's a time when Mars has the upper hand. So Mars is like really pushing against Saturn and like saying to Saturn, like, you've made this so difficult, and it's gotta happen. And so here I am with my sword and my shield, and shit's getting real, kind of thing, right? So and we need change. So it can be scary, yes, but I think it's, I was talking about working with the energy of Uranus, and I'm a little bit all over the map right now, I know, but embracing that change, even though it can feel destabilizing, is usually the best way to go. And again, not like recklessly or foolishly, but it's facing the facts that things as they are or have been in the past are not sustainable, whether we like it or not. And so something's got to give, and it's going to give. So how can we be innovative? That's a word I haven't used yet in this video for Uranus, right? Uranus is an innovator, and wants us to innovate, to do things differently. So how can we do that? And what we're looking at in particular at the time of this new moon is the house that Scorpio sits for us, for each of us in our chart. And also even that axis of Scorpio Taurus. And as we move through the month of November, more focus on the Saturn piece, right? The house that Saturn hits and how that is interacting with these energies. So one last thing I want to say to you that's kind of in the same vein as what I was talking about in terms of Uranus, like just before I take it through each sign, is that I know a lot of people at this stage of the game are just, they're over it all, right? They're fed up. They're tired of hearing bad news. They're tired of all the things that are going on. Some people are fed up, so they are taking action, for better or worse. And some people are fed up and are kind of choosing to bury their heads in the sand a little and to ignore what's going on. And, you know, I don't know that either way is the right way necessarily. And I know that sometimes we need to take a break from it all. But I do know from personal experience and a lot of other reasons that ignoring something does not make it go away. So, and if something really wants to get your attention, it's going to get your attention, right? So in my own personal experience, it's way easier to pay attention to those initial, whether they be red flags or or sort of instincts, intuitions, you know, rather than kind of going, nothing to see here, I'm not looking over there, or ignoring it, right? Because it's, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And so best sort of be prepared and as proactive as you can be, or at very least have, like, this is the thing about astrology that I absolutely love. One of the things I absolutely love is that, you know, when you kind of zoom out and you see the big picture, even when, first of all, when certain things happen, you're like, there's that. Okay. Right. And even because we can't always know exactly what's going to happen, but we can have an idea of even the general sort of notion that these are things that are wanting to be dealt with or noticed right now at this period of time, you know, in my life or in the world. And that can be really, really helpful. So enough about all of that. I'll get off my soapbox now, and I will do as promised and take it through the signs. So here's the new moon in Scorpio at 12 degrees Scorpio, opposite Uranus and Taurus. So I'll tell you the axis to that this is triggering, and the themes that are being stirred up, and keeping in mind that the Scorpio house is the house where something new wants to happen, you know, something new is being conceived of, new seeds are being planted in that area of life right now. And it could take a while for those seeds to grow. It could take 2 weeks up to the next full moon that's happening in Taurus, which it happens to be a lunar eclipse, which is the first eclipse that's kicking off the 18-month cycle of eclipses on the Taurus-Scorpio axis, right? But we'll get to that in the next video. But just a heads up about that. So this new moon growing towards that, over that 2-week period to that full moon, but then furthermore growing over sort of the next 6 months to culmination at the full moon in Scorpio, right? Six months from now. So it's not necessarily that something's going to happen right on the day of the new moon. But you may set some intentions around this time, or something may come into your awareness that tweaks you to whatever wants to sprout there. Okay, so keep that in mind. And then I'm going to quickly mention to you where Saturn is sitting as well, because keep your eye on that. That is, you know, Saturn is where Saturn's really making things tricky, and is throwing those obstacles and those lessons and those boundaries up and wanting to kind of hang on to tradition. But Uranus up there in Taurus is saying time for change, right? Okay, so here we go. We're going to start with Scorpio because obviously, Scorpio, it's your season and this is your new moon. So this is happening, right, across your first 7th house axis. The new moon in your first house, Uranus and Taurus in your 7th house of partnership. So first house where the new moon is happening, something new, new seeds of intention being planted that are all about you, because the first house is about you. It's about your physical incarnation, you know, your vitality, your body, the health of your body in some ways, the appearance of your body. It is about how you are perceived by the world and how you come at the world. So, I like to say, when something hits the first house, this can really be life-changing because it kind of impacts you and who you are. So this is where the new moon is happening, and you may be planting some seeds of intention. Like you may be having an idea right now, or planting some seeds, conceiving of something that you want to grow in relation to any of those themes I just talked about, right? Your body, your appearance, how you approach the world, how the world sees you, like that kind of thing. And then there is this wild card energy of Uranus and Taurus happening across the sky in your 7th house of partnership. So, Uranus is disrupting your partnerships. Like over the long haul of Uranus and Taurus, but it's being triggered right now at the time of this new moon. And it is triggering whatever the new moon wants to bring about, right? So, and it's kind of, when Uranus energy is triggered, it is surprise. Like I said, it's the wild card, right? And it can be liberating. It can be, but it can be disruptive or rebellious or destabilizing or surprising in a really good way. Like it sort of all depends. We never quite know what to expect when Uranus comes to the table. But regardless, this first 7th house axis of you and the other is being triggered at the time of this new moon, right? So when I say the other, that could be significant other, that could be business partnerships, that could be relationships you have with like close friends, family members, that kind of thing. It's usually one-to-one relationships. It can also involve contracts and agreements when we're talking about the 7th house. So some surprising developments in relation to those themes, right? That impact you and impact your approach to the world or how the world perceives you or something like that. Or something surprising going on in a partnership that has, of course, a direct impact on you. So these, this is the new moon axis here. And then we also have, eventually those planets moving through Scorpio are starting to trigger the Saturn-Uranus situation. So we've talked about Uranus and Taurus already. Saturn is sitting in your 4th house in Aquarius, right? And so by now you likely know what this is about. There have been some, perhaps some calls for maturity, responsibility, lessons hard earned, teachable moments. These are all Saturn things, obstacles, boundaries, delays, all of these kinds of things in relation to the home front for you. So home, family, place of living, your roots, these kinds of themes, right? That's what Saturn is triggering in Aquarius. And so this is a story that's been playing out all year, and over the course of the next couple months, as we move through to the end of 2021, we're going to see the last, I wouldn't even say the last hurrah, because Saturn and Uranus come into a pretty close, not an exact square, but they come pretty close again in 2022. So the story's not quite over, but we're reaching the like magnum opus kind of point. Okay, so that's for you, Scorpio. Usually who's ever signed it is, I take a little bit more time there, and that's why I like to start. That's where I like to start rather than just always starting with Aries and working through. So I'm going to leave that for you, Scorpio, and I'm going to move on to Libra next. So, excuse me. Libra, for you, the new moon is taken off in your second house. So it is where, the second house is the house of our personal resources, our money, but our time and our energy as well. What we place value on and worth, it can be like our material possessions, even. It can be how we get our basic needs met. It can be how we value ourselves, so our sense of self-worth. So there's something going on here, something new getting off the ground, something new that you are involved in, or something new being conceived of, some new intentions you have, some new intentions life has for you that revolve around these second house themes. And, it is across the sky, we've got Uranus in Taurus, exactly opposite this new moon, and that's sitting in your 8th house of other people's resources, other people's money, time, energy, the intimate connections you have with other people, your entanglements with other people and institutions, usually like of a financial nature in some way. The house that deals with our entanglements and what sort of results from those entanglements too. So that can speak to like, the skeletons in the closet, our psychological depths, right? And the wounding and healing and all of that. So, and this deep sense of transformation. So all that to say, the new thing in the second house, whatever that is the wild card energy is coming from this destabilizing effect that Uranus is having in your 8th house of, like I said, other people's resources, to put it simply, right? And so in a practical sense, this can be things like your partner's income, or can be things like taxes, debt, insurance, loans, inheritance, scholarships, anything along those lines, even lottery winnings. And it can be those really intimate entanglements you have with other people and institutions even. So Uranus, again, having this sort of destabilizing, disruptive, or potentially liberating effect in that 8th house. And then you have Saturn sitting in your 5th house. Saturn and Aquarius in the 5th house, right? Which is part of this story of 2021. Saturn throwing up some obstacles. Saturn making things challenging. Saturn wanting you to learn lessons the hard way. Saturn trying to, calling for more maturity and responsibility and these kinds of things in your 5th house, which has to do with themes of how you have fun in life, what brings you pleasure, what sparks joy for you, what creative sort of projects you have going on, your creative self-expression, and children. So your children, issues around, pregnancy, that kind of thing, even in the 5th house. So those are themes that Saturn is kind of making challenging for us, or for you, Libra rising, in particular this year. And we're going to have that further triggered again, right, as these planets move through Scorpio. Okay, so that's for you, Libra. Hopefully that's helpful. For sure, listen to the intro as always, or else you miss the context, right? And I'm going to move on to Virgo now. Virgo, for you, we have the new moon happening in your 3rd house. So there is something new you are conceiving of, something new you want to get off the ground, some new seeds of intention you're planting, or something that the universe is intending for you, which sometimes happens, that is related to your third house of your communications, of your thought processes, right? Thinking, communicating, commerce, marketing, the daily exchanges we have, short distance travel, teaching and learning, usually of the sort of the early years, sort of up to high school, or things that we're learning that are kind of like we're newbies at almost, right? That learning the basics, the 101 kind of thing. And so there is something new that wants to happen here, something new that you want to happen here potentially, with this Scorpio new moon. And then across the sky, there's Uranus moving through your ninth house, disrupting things there, potentially liberating things there, destabilizing things there. And your ninth house has to do with your sort of the way you think about the world, right? It is your world view, your philosophies, your belief system, this sense of expanding your horizons is very ninth house. And how do we do that? Oftentimes through travel, oftentimes through interacting with people who are different from us, right? People from different cultures and places in the world, and learning things that are sort of beyond the basics, right? This notion of higher learning, and maybe encountering teachers or being the teacher, or getting our message out there, publishing in some way. So those are all ninth house themes. And so Uranus and Taurus is there kind of shaking things up, and maybe having something to say about this new moon and what wants to happen there. A surprise could be offered up to you in some way, right? So that's the new moon axis for you, Virgo. And then you've got Saturn, traveling through your sixth house and making these on and off tense conversations, having these tense conversations with Uranus there in Taurus, right? And now Mars and the other planets are moving through Scorpio, further triggering that once again. And so this is not a new story. It is, what's been going on. That Saturn is trying to teach you some tough lessons. It's making things a little bit difficult. It's making you work for it. Throwing some challenges in your way, saying, like nothing worth having is I can't remember the saying, but if it's worth having, it's worth working for, or something like that. That's Saturn would say that. It can be asking for more maturity and responsibility in this sixth house area. Well, what does the sixth house speak to? The sixth house speaks to our daily grind. So I'm kind of laughing sort of internally here, because this is me. I'm a Virgo rising, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, I know what this story's all about. But so the sixth house is our day-to-day work that we do, right? The checking off the ticky boxes, the work that we do that may be paid and it may be unpaid. It's the hard labor. It is how we are in service to other people that we may not get any kind of credit or exchange for. But we do it anyways because we're required to, or there is some sense of devotion to whatever that is. There is this idea of our wellness in the sixth house as well, right? Because our daily routine and what we do on the day-to-day impacts our physical well-being. And so that can be something that's been going on as well for you, Virgo. And it can also have something to do with pets in the sixth house, right? So these are themes that Saturn is like I said, challenging us to rise to the occasion. And they are going to be impacted and be a part of the story of the new moon that's happening in Scorpio. And this is all kind of transpiring over the next couple of months till we hit, the end of 2021. So as I said, it's like the grand finale, right? We're like, it's like this final alchemizing or smelting, if you will, or catalyzing that's going on right now. Okay, so that's for you, Virgo. I'm going to move to Leo now. Leo, for you, this new moon is happening in your fourth house. So it is calling you to conceive of something new, to plant new seeds of intention, or, you know, the universe is intending something new for you to take place in that fourth house of home, family, roots, place of living, ancestry, real estate, these sorts of things. Your sense of emotional security as well is fourth house, right? And it can be like nurturing female figures in your life even. And then, or like, let me rephrase that, sorry. Nurturing feminine figures. I don't necessarily mean female. Nurturing sort of like mothering figures, right? Which don't necessarily have to be women. So, anyways, okay, so that's the fourth house themes that this new moon is speaking to. And then across the sky in your 10th house, you've got Uranus and Taurus disrupting things there, right? Potentially liberating, rebelling, destabilizing. In the 10th house of your career, your public life, your public reputation and persona, your relationship to authority and authority figures, and your own sense of authority. You know, this is this axis of public life, 10th house, private life, 4th house. This axis that I sometimes refer to as the axis of parenting. And that can even be like self-parenting, right? You may have heard that phrase, reparenting ourselves, like where we kind of have to grow up and ultimately be who we needed when we were younger, so to speak. So this dynamic is going on at the time of this full moon, or new moon rather, for you. And, you know, it can be, as we spoke about in the introduction, it can be a crunchy time with Mars there and Mercury getting involved in the party and all this stuff going on in Scorpio that then triggers the Saturn-Uranus square, right? And for you, you've got Saturn sitting in your 7th house. So Saturn is teaching you some hard lessons over the course of this year with regards to one-to-one relationships, your close personal relationships, the relationships you have with your partner, significant other, close friends and family members, business associates, you know, any even rivals, like people that you know you're kind of in rivalry with, not like secret rivals, and contracts and agreements is 7th house as well. So there's been some hard lessons here for you with Saturn there, and some obstacles and some calls for, you know, being more mature and responsible potentially in this area of life. There is a call to master this 7th house with Saturn there, right? One-to-one relationships. So there could, you know, it could be a bit of a dry spell with Saturn there. It could be, like I said, obstacles and difficulties and that kind of thing. And this new moon, which is triggering the fixed signs and triggering the Saturn-Uranus square, is going to further kind of amplify that. And it's kind of like, it's not over till it's over, right? So here we have one more chance with Mars triggering from a place, like I said, of dignity and strength, triggering this Saturn-Uranus square. So, you know, it's a time when you can rise to the occasion. But it's also a time when, like I said in the intro, you need to be mindful of your interactions, right? With others, and just, you know, how you're moving about the world these days, because Mars can be quite aggressive, and so, you know, assertive is something that many of us need to be better at. Aggressive, maybe not so much, right? So, okay, so that's what I have for you, Leo. And I'm going to move on to Cancer now, where we have the new moon triggering your 5th house. New moon asking you to plant some seeds of intention, asking you to conceive of something new. Maybe the universe, if this is not something you are consciously intending, maybe the universe is intending it for you, right? For something new to happen in relation to your 5th house of children, issues involving children, even pregnancy, could be what brings you joy in life, how you have fun, what brings you pleasure, what you do for fun, hobbies, even those kinds of things, creative pursuits, creative projects, how you shine your light out into the world. These kinds of things are 5th house related. And so this is where the new moon seeds are being planted for you. And then across the sky in the 11th house, we've got Uranus and Taurus throwing curveballs and lighting things up there, electrifying things in the 11th house, which speaks to your collaborations, which speaks to your allies and supporters and friends and networks, and your sort of vision for the future and how those people can help you kind of reach that, right? So there's an interplay here going on at the time of this new moon between these two houses, and it's quite strong, as we spoke about, because it's an exact opposition, right? So those are the two houses to watch for in terms of the new moon energy. And then we have Saturn sitting in your 8th house. Saturn over there, the long story, the backdrop story of 2021, Saturn square Uranus. And now with all these planets moving through Scorpio, we're going to have that further triggered. And with Saturn and Uranus moving closer into an exact square, which will happen at the end of the year, December 24th, I believe, we're building to that sort of magnum opus, if you will. And this Scorpio new moon is a catalyzing event. So, and that Mars moving through and triggering as well, that we talked about in the intro. So for you, Cancer, the Saturnian lessons are happening in your 8th house, right? So 8th house, lessons around other people's, or themes around other people's resources, other people's money, time, energy, right? Resources that you share with a partner potentially, or resources that come to you or are paid out, involving certain institutions like banks, like taxes, insurance, wills, inheritance, debt, loans, these kinds of things. This notion of your intimate entanglements in general is the 8th house, and how there is a process of transformation that takes place through those intimate entanglements, right? And sometimes that can involve, some skeletons in the closet, and dealing with our psychological sort of wounding and that sort of thing. It's complex, the 8th house. But, so Saturn's been asking for some hard work in relation to those themes. It is throwing up obstacles. It is, there are delays happening when Saturn's there. Saturn wants you to master this area of life. Saturn is potentially wanting to hang on to the way that it always was. And then Uranus is saying, nope, can't stay like that anymore. It's not sustainable, right? And comes in with this square from Taurus and triggers a disruption to the status quo. So that is what's happening for you, Cancer. And I hope you find that, helpful. I'm going to move on to Gemini now. And Gemini, for you, the new moon is hitting your 6th house. So new moon in the 6th house, seeds of intention being planted by you or the universe. Something new wants to get off the ground. Something new wants to happen in relation to your daily routine, your work, the work you do on the day to day, whether that be paid or unpaid work. The checking off the ticky boxes that we all have to do on the day to day, the hard labor of life, the you know, and how your daily routine can impact your wellness, your physical wellness. So that may play a role here as far as this new moon goes. So something new, like maybe it's a new health routine you're looking at starting. Maybe it's a new like daily job you want to do. Maybe it is something related to pets that's going on for you, or some new thing that wants to happen in your 6th house. And then that is being opposed by Uranus and Taurus in your 12th house, right? So it's this axis. The 6th and 12th is this axis of order, the 6th house, versus chaos, the 12th house. It is an axis that speaks to our wellness on all levels. Like the 6th house generally, it often speaks to our physical health, but the 12th house can be more our mental, spiritual health. You know, the 6th house is the routine we do on the day-to-day. The 12th house is how we escape that routine for whatever reason. So, you know, putting it simply, and I'm not going to go into all the nitty-gritty details, but that gives you, like, these are the themes being triggered here. There's some disruption going on from Uranus and Taurus in the 12th house that can be like disruptions coming from, you know, like mental or spiritual health of you or somebody else. And there can be places like, and considerations like institutions like hospitals, long-term care facilities, prisons, spiritual retreat centers, rehab facilities. These kinds of things may play a role. Sometimes they do when we're talking about the 12th house. The 12th house speaks to, like, you know, wrapping things up, to endings, to sometimes our blind spots and the things we are not seeing or we are not consciously aware of as well. So that's the axis being hit by the new moon, you know, opposite Uranus. And then you've got Saturn moving through your 9th house. So Saturn has been, there has been this call for maturity and responsibility, and also, you know, Saturn throwing obstacles and delays and lessons hard won into this area of life for you that has to do with how you think about the world, your philosophy, your belief system, expanding your horizons, you know, things you learn from people who are different from you or may have a different viewpoint from you. This notion of higher learning in some way. It can speak to travel, you know, to foreign places and that kind of thing. So this is all 9th house, and Saturn's been making it a bit of a challenge there for you over this 2021 period, because there has been this on and off square between Saturn and Uranus that is now being triggered again as it's coming to exact. It will reach exact again December 24th, but you know, we're amping up right now, and this new moon is a trigger point, as Mars is now in Scorpio as well, and Mercury soon to follow, and all of the things I said in the intro that I hope you listened to. So that's what's going on for you, Gemini. I'm going to move to Taurus now, and I think we're going to have a bit of a longer one today, but there was a lot to say, and I think this is really important, so bear with me here. Taurus, for you, this new moon in Scorpio is hitting your 7th house, right? So some new thing wants to be conceived of, whether that be by you, whether you are planting like seeds of intention to grow something new in this 7th house, or which is where the new moon is for you, or the universe is doing that for you, which sometimes happens. You have a new moon in the 7th house of one-to-one relationships, right? Of the other, so to speak. So that could be significant other, partnerships in some way, which are, you know, it can run the gamut. It can be like a marriage partner or a life partner, or it can be just like close friends, family members, that kind of thing. It can be business associates. It can speak to the idea of our rivals, right? People we know we're in a bit of a rivalry with. It can speak to contracts and agreements. So these are all things that are potentially on the table for you in terms of something new beginning, around the time of this new moon that will grow and be and blossom potentially around the full moon in Taurus, which is an eclipse in a couple weeks time, or in 6 months from now, right? And grow and sort of reach a point of fullness around 6 months from now at the Scorpio full moon, or a bit of both potentially. So that is where the new moon's happening for you. And it is opposite, Uranus in Taurus, in your sign. So Uranus is moving through your sign. It is about halfway through. So I'm just looking at the chart here. Yeah, it's retrograding now. So like it's hovering around the halfway point, halfway through its journey through your sign. And so it has a few more years to go still, but at this time, like over 2021, right, it's really involved in some big work because it has been in this on and off square, exact square. The square hasn't really gone away, but it's come into more intensity on and off over the course of 2021 with Saturn. And so for you, Taurus, that disruptive, liberating, rebellion, destabilizing, sort of shake up, innovative, all those Uranian words, that energy of Uranus is impacting your self because that's your first house. So your physical incarnation, your physical body and vitality, your physical appearance, your how you approach the world or how you come at the world, how you present to the world, how the world perceives you. This is the first house. And so there's some disruption going on there, some change, some innovation happening, right? Regarding those themes for you with Uranus there. And further to that, so this is impacting this new moon, whatever the newness is in the seventh house. And there's this interplay there on this axis of relationship, right? And then you've got Saturn sitting in your 10th house. So Saturn's been over there in the 10th house all 2021, coming into this on and off square with Uranus. And Saturn, Saturn can make things difficult. It can delay things. It can throw obstacles in our path. It can demand a lot of work from us. It can make things difficult. I think I said that already. It can really call us to be more responsible and mature in some way. And in your case, that has to do with your 10th house, which is your public life, your public reputation and persona, your career, your worldly ambitions, the legacy that you wish to leave behind, right? This is where Saturn is calling you to, it's calling you to master that area of life. And so this is now being triggered once again and into this, like the grand finale of 2021, Saturn and Uranus will come into an exact square on December 24th. But it's not a new story. It's a story that's been playing out all year. It's just that now it's being triggered again by all these planets moving through Scorpio, including Mars, who is now in strength and dignity in its home sign. And we talked about all of that in the intro. So there's some oomph there, right? And some sort of like Mars is coming in with the flamethrower and triggering all of this over the next little bit. So it could be a wild ride, but it can also be quite exhilarating and exciting. All right, so that's for you, Taurus. I'm going to move on to Aries now. Aries, for you, you have the new moon happening in your 8th house. So this is a new moon that speaks to themes of other people's resources, including their time and energy, but we often think of it as financial resources, right? Monetary resources. That can also be time and energy. 8th house is your intimate entanglements with other people and institutions. So it can be partner's income and money you share with, a partner or a business partner even. It can be money that comes to you or is paid out by you in relation to institutions like banks. It can be loans, taxes, insurance, debt, mortgages, inheritance, wills. These sorts of things are all 8th house. It can be, when we're talking about this excuse me, notion of intimate entanglements, it can be, you know, those intimate sort of interactions and connections that we have that have a deep psychological sort of impact on us, right? Can be eighth house, and they cause us to transform in some way, or they call us to transform in some way. And so this is where the new moon is happening for you. And so, you know, at a new moon, of course, there's this, it's an initiation point. It's a point where we are planting seeds of intention. We are conceiving of something new in relation to whatever those themes are, right? In your case, the eighth house, Scorpio. And, you know, this can be something you intend, or it can be something the universe intends for you, right? And then there is this disruptive force of Uranus sitting across the sky in your second house of your personal assets and resources, your own money and energy and time, and how you get your basic needs met, and what you value, and how you value yourself, right? Your sense of self-worth. And so Uranus is there disrupting things, destabilizing things, maybe causing a bit of a rebellion, or liberating you in some way, right? Or calling you to innovate that area of life in some way. And so this has a direct connection to this new moon energy, because Uranus is exactly opposite this new moon, as we spoke about in the introduction. And so there's that going on for you, Aries. But then further to that, you've got Saturn in your 11th house. And Saturn's been there, you know, on and off square to Uranus all year. And Saturn is making things challenging in this 11th house. It is calling for maturity and responsibility and hard work. And maybe it's delaying things and throwing obstacles in the way, right? In relation to 11th house themes of the group, of your collaborations, of your friendships, of your networks, of your supporters and your allies, and your vision for the future, right? And how potentially some of these people can help you reach that vision. So Saturn there, kind of making things difficult. And well, you know, this energy will be triggered and is being triggered now as of the time of this new moon, because we've got planets now starting to move through Scorpio. And we talked about all of these details in the intro, so definitely don't skip that. So, you know, I just want to remind you, though, that Mars, your ruler, also rules Scorpio. And Mars has some dignity and some strength right now moving through Scorpio. So that can really help you to kind of rise to the occasion, right? But being mindful of the fact that Mars can have an aggressive side. What we want to channel is the assertive, courageous, maybe strategic, right? In Scorpio side of Mars. So I'm going to leave that there for you, Aries. I'm starting to lose my voice, and we still have 4 signs to go here. So I'm going to move on to Pisces. Pisces, for you, the new moon is triggering your 9th house. So for you, Pisces, there are new seeds of intention being planted in the 9th house, either by you or by the universe, right? Sometimes if we don't do these things ourselves, that's what happens. And in any case, there is a call for something new to transpire in this 9th house that will grow over the course of the next 2 weeks, you know, potentially culminating at the full moon in Taurus, which is an eclipse in a couple of weeks, or the full moon in Scorpio in 6 months' time, or maybe a bit of both. And so for you, that new thing or those new intentions revolve around expanding your horizons in some way. And that can happen through travel, long distance travel. That can happen through higher education, teaching, learning, you know, connecting with people who are different from you, people from different places and different cultures, things you learn, you know, that are new to you in some way. And it's about like our perceptions, our belief systems, our worldview, right? This kind of thing is very 9th house. So something new happening there, you know, in relation to those themes. And then you've got Uranus sitting across the sky in Taurus, exactly opposite this new moon, like we talked about in the intro. And that's in your 3rd house. So Uranus is like the the shock and awe factor, right? Uranus is throwing the curveballs. Uranus is electrifying something, disrupting something, or potentially liberating you in some way, or innovating in some way, calling you to innovate in some way. Your third house, which is your communication style, it's about our thought processes and the day-to-day communications we have, and our the technologies we even use when we're talking about, communicating. It's about moving parts. It can be about vehicles. It can be about our short sort of distance travel and commutes. It can have to do with, things like your immediate environment in general, like your community, your neighbors, your cousins, your siblings, your peers, that sort of thing. Uranus disrupting things there, right? Or calling, like I said, for liberation or innovation, doing things differently, change in some way. So that interplay between Uranus and the new moon. And then you've got Saturn over there in your 12th house, which is, being a bit of a thorn, as Saturn can be, but calling you, in this case, to master the 12th house, which is what Saturn does, but maybe making things difficult, making things challenging, calling for maturity and responsibility and lessons hard earned, right, in the 12th house, which speaks to things like your mental and spiritual health, your ability to rest and recuperate and have downtime and maybe even vacation time. It can speak to, your blind spots, the things you aren't consciously aware of. It can speak to endings and losses in some way, the wrapping up of cycles. It can speak to, things like even what we don't see. It can be places tucked away from the world. So places like hospitals, prisons, spiritual retreat centers, those sorts of places where we go to kind of, when we're sort of away from daily life, so to speak. So Saturn is being a bit of a taskmaster in that area of life for you. And this is reaching, at the end of 2021, Saturn and Uranus will come into an exact square again. And so we're going to have this, the magnum opus of 2021, so to speak, right? So listen to the intro, because you're going to get a lot of good juicy details there that will help you navigate all of this. And I'm going to move on to Aquarius now. So Aquarius, for you, we have your 10th house being activated by this new moon. So the new moon is calling you to plant some seeds of intention. It's calling you to conceive of something new, or maybe the universe is doing that for you, right? Like sometimes these things happen without our, shall I say, consent, or, they just happen even though we don't consciously intend them. So something new wants to get off the ground, let's put it that way, Aquarius, in your 10th house of career, of public reputation and persona, of your public life, of the legacy you wish to leave, of your relationship to authority and authority figures and your own authority, right, out in the world. And so, but then there's some disruption happening from Uranus in Taurus across the sky from this new moon. In your 4th house of home, family, roots, place of living, real estate, emotional security, nurturing sort of mother figures, this kind of thing, parents even in general. And so there's this face-off happening between the new moon and Uranus. And we spoke about that in greater detail in the intro, so don't skip that for sure. But expect, when Uranus gets involved this closely in the conversation, we're being called to take notice, right? And Uranus can have that destabilizing, disruptive, rebellious, or liberating effect, right? It doesn't have to be bad. And then you've got Saturn sitting in your 1st house, Saturn in Aquarius, all year. And so this is, you're no stranger to this energy and what's that's bringing about for you. It is, first of all, your 1st house is all about you. It is your physical incarnation. It is your physical wellness, your vitality. It is how the world perceives you and how you come at the world, how you present yourself to the world. First house can impact everything because it's all about us, right? Or you in this case. And so it can have a big impact there. And Saturn moving through that first house it's a challenge, right? Saturn brings challenges and obstacles and hard work and delays and sometimes disappointments, and it's calling us to be more responsible and more mature, and it's lessons hard learned. But usually Saturn brings rewards over time too, so we have to keep that in mind. But for you, Saturn moving through that first house, and so this all the planets, the new moon, and then the planets moving through Scorpio that we talked about in the intro, Mars at home in Scorpio, Mercury, all going to trigger these fixed energies. You're a fixed sign, Aquarius, and going to trigger that fixed energy again. And, we're reaching that sort of crescendo of the year when Saturn and Uranus come into their final exact square around December 24th. But that energy is building now. But like I was saying, Mars has a lot of power right now in Scorpio, triggering this. And so it can be a real call to action. It can really lend you some oomph and some strength and willpower and assertiveness and courage and strategy and all of this, right? If we harness the optimal qualities of Mars, right? Rather than being combative and aggressive and selfish and those kinds of things. So, listen to the intro, Aquarius, because it's going to flesh this all out for you, and it will give you greater context as to what to expect and what you are kind of, dealing with over this time. And although this can sound a little bit, scary and a little bit, like who loves disruption, really, it can also be really exciting and exhilarating. So let's just hope that's the way it all plays out in the end. All right, so we're going to move on now to Capricorn. Capricorn, for you've got the new moon happening in your 11th house. So the new whatever it is that wants to be conceived of or get off the ground, or the new seeds of intention that you are planting or the universe is planting for you, revolve around your collaborations, right? 11th house, your supporters, your allies, your friendship groups, networks, your vision for the future, and how those people can help you reach that vision, right? So something new transpiring here at the time of this new moon in Scorpio on November 4th. But there is this disruptive energy across the sky that has to do with Uranus and Taurus, because it is exactly opposite this new moon, as we spoke all about in the intro. And so Uranus brings the lightning rod. Uranus brings a call for innovation and change. Uranus can liberate us, but it can also be quite destabilizing and disruptive, right? So that is coming from this area of life that speaks to, it's the 5th house for you, which speaks to themes around children. So children in general, your children, even things like pregnancy, anything revolving around children, things that we create. So our creative self-expression out there in the world, how we shine our light, creative projects, and what sparks joy for us, like what brings us a sense of pleasure and fun, in life. Even romance can be 5th house. So this is where the sort of disruptive energy of Uranus is, and playing opposite this new moon. And then you have Saturn in your 2nd house. And this has been happening all year, And Saturn has been, in this square with Uranus in Taurus, which Uranus is in your 5th house. So Saturn and Uranus have been doing this dance. It's the backdrop of 2021, right? It is, and they are moving in and out of intensity. And as at the time of this new moon, they are starting to move into a closer proximity in terms of where they are in the sky, and coming into an exact 90-degree angle again for the third time in 2021. And that will be on December 24th. But the pressure is mounting now, right? The good news is this is not a new story at this point in the year. We know what this is about. And so in that way, it's not new. But it doesn't mean that it's easy, because Saturn brings obstacles and challenges and difficulties, and it asks us to be mature and responsible, which you're no stranger to that, Capricorn. Saturn is your ruling planet, and it also rules Aquarius, but it is, it calls us to do the tough work, and eventually hopefully reap the rewards of that tough work, right? And so for you, that is in the area of life that speaks to your own personal resources, your money, your financial resources, your material resources and possessions, but also your time and energy as well. And it speaks to what you value, and how you value yourself, your sense of self-worth. So as these planets, as this new moon hits, and then these planets are moving through Scorpio, Mars, Mercury, the sun, obviously, they're further triggering this energy. And we have some potentially white knuckle moments. But also I want to say that it could be very exhilarating. It could be exciting. Sure, you could be called to adjust course, when Uranus is involved. You could be asked to embrace changes. You could be asked to, or be called to, not resist changes that want to and need to happen. But Mars there in Scorpio is lending us a bit of courage and strategy and strength, right? It's at home in Scorpio, like I was speaking to in the intro. And it is giving us the capacity to really rise to the occasion. And so keep that in mind in terms of whatever's going on for you, Capricorn. Okay, so I'm going to move to last but not least in this bit of a lengthy video here, and that is Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, for you, the new moon is happening in your 12th house. So the seeds of intention being planted here, either by you or by the universe, potentially, to conceive of something new, have to do with what goes on behind closed doors in the 12th house. It has to do with things under the surface, maybe your blind spots, maybe things you are not consciously aware of, things that come through in even dreams. It has to do with your mental and spiritual health, the 12th house. It has to do with, this notion of what you do outside of the daily grind, right? How you take a break from all of that. It can have to do with endings and losses in the 12th house. It's the last house, right, on the wheel. And so we're wrapping things up there. It can have to do with even, in a practical sense, things we can be involved in some way in places that are tucked away from the world, so to speak. So places sometimes spiritual retreats, places, or places like healthcare facilities, or rehab facilities, or prisons, or any of those kinds of things, right? Or where we go on vacation even. So those are all 12th house themes. That's where the new moon is happening. Something new getting off the ground there. But there is this disruption from Uranus in Taurus in your 6th house. And that is the house of physical health. That is the house of the daily grind and what you do on the day-to-day. And it speaks to physical health because it's about our routine and and that can obviously impact our health, right? It's the labor that we do on the day to day, whether it be paid or unpaid. It can speak to your daily work, if like a job, so to speak. It can speak to pets, even. It can speak to how you are in service, what or who you are devoted to, in some way. So Uranus is there, and Uranus is throwing a wrench into things. Uranus is liberating, disrupting, calling for innovation, and change in some way in that sixth house. And this is playing off the new moon, right? And then the last piece of the puzzle here is Saturn sitting in the third house for you. So Saturn and Uranus have been facing off, or squaring off rather, on and off all year, and now they're starting to come into an exact square again for a third and final time, which is happening December 24th. But the pressure is mounting again. But this is not a new story. This is something that we have been dealing with all year. Something potentially you have been dealing with in your own personal life all year, right? Is this Saturn-Uranus story. And so with the new moon in Scorpio, another fixed sign, and opposing Uranus in Taurus, a fixed sign, this Saturn-Uranus square is triggered again, because we've got the new moon, and then we have, Mars in there who will trigger, Mercury who will trigger, the sun moving through Scorpio as well. And so, it's this final crescendo of this story that we're building towards, right? Of the Saturn-Uranus story. And so for you, Sagittarius, what that's about is third house themes of schooling, teaching, learning, usually anything up to and including high school. But if you're not like in school per se, it can be like things you're learning of learning the basics of something sort of thing. But it's about our communications, our communication style, our thinking, our speech, our self-talk, our mental processes. It can have to do with writing. It can have to do with like anything involving communication. What's going on in our immediate environment? So involving things like community members, neighbors, cousins, siblings, peers. It can have to do with short distance travel. It can have to do with things like vehicles, moving parts, mobility issues. All of these things are third house, right? It's a busy house, the third house. So this is where Saturn has been slowly moving through and, being triggered by this Uranus energy. And so Saturn's making things challenging in terms of those third house themes for you. It is calling for maturity and responsibility regarding these themes. It is asking you to learn some hard lessons, offering up some teachable moments. But the thing about Saturn is that if we do the work, we reap the rewards. So that's what we have to keep in mind when things get difficult, right? When Saturn throws the obstacles up and resists what we want and all of that stuff. Puts up the big no, the big stop sign, right? Saturn can have a tendency to do that. But, I'll finish off by saying that we've got Mars, as I spoke about in greater length in the introduction, in Scorpio. Mars is dignified, like it's at home in Scorpio. So it has strength and dignity there. And so it is giving us the strength and the courage and the strategy to deal, right? Like it's the call to action and the courage, to deal with whatever this is that's going on with this Saturn-Uranus business. And it is allowing us, this real power, if you will. And we just have to, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So we have to remember to channel the optimal qualities of Mars, which is being assertive and strategic and courageous and, sort of like focused and driven and all of those things, rather than being combative and aggressive and violent and that sort of thing, which Mars can also do. which is sort of the dark side, right, of Mars. All right, so that is for you, Sagittarius. I hope that gives you good food for thought for this moon cycle. I will catch you again. I will catch everybody again in a couple weeks' time to speak to you about the upcoming full moon, which is a lunar eclipse in Taurus in 2 weeks. Okay, take good care. Let me know how this is all playing out for you. I would love to hear in the comments, and I'll catch you in a couple weeks. Bye for now.